This is how to make a supernova, and today we're going to make the V-wing VS Vulture droid diorama. Recently I finished watching the Clone Wars for the second time, and if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, it's an amazing animation series between Attack of the Clones and the end of Revenge of the Sith. And when I finished watching, I was immediately pumped up to make something cool from the series and immediately practice some skills. So here we go. I bought and 3D printed this V-wing model from Darkfire Designs. The link for the file is in the video description. For painting all the red parts of the spaceship, I'm going to use some Vallejo Black Red. All the primary colors are done, and now we're going to move over to the non-oil and we're going to cover everything. All the non-oil will get in all the recesses and will show us all the details from this model. But when you use non-oil or another shade on a ship like this with a lot of flat surfaces, make sure your shade doesn't pull in any of the flat surfaces where it looks weird. So in all the corners and all the crevices, that's a good spot, but right here in the middle of a flat area, well, that looks weird. And then I knocked my non-oil over again. I really should find a solution for this problem. If you have any, let me know. For the next step, we're going to use some black paint, and we need black paint for two things. The first one is the seat inside the cockpit. We're just going to give it a black cover, and the second thing is some battle damage on our ship. And to do that, I'm going to use a sponge with a rough texture. I just picked some parts off with my fingers. I'm going to dip it in the black paint and very slightly push it on the model. And for the battle damage, I dip my sponge in some black paint, and now I'm going to test it. This is still too much, and now we're getting somewhere for our battle damage. You really want the small paint particles on your ship. I'm adding more black paint on the front of the ship because this would be the part that would be weathered most by debris or anything else they're flying through. The last thing we're going to do for our battle damage is to add some small dots of metal paint in between the black paint to simulate the effect that the paint from the spaceship has been stripped off, and you can see the metal of the ship itself. My friends, if you like my video so far, I hope you like and subscribe, because I have a lot more cool projects I want to share with you. For the R2 unit, I'm going to use a mix of Evil Sun Scarlet and Black Red. This is a free Vulture droid model from Thingiverse. The link to the file is in the video description. Painting the V-wing took way longer than I thought. The next step was to paint the Vulture droid. And I thought, well, the Vulture droid has a lot of browns and dark grays, so that's going to be very easy. But then my nerd mode activated. Because the V-wing is introduced at the end of the Clone Wars and all the Vulture droids didn't have the browns anymore, but were having the grey and blue markings from the Separatists and not the browns anymore from the Trade Federation. So I needed to change my plan. With the Vulture droid I'm going to start with the white stripes, and the first step is to mask off all the parts that need to stay black. I was almost ready with all the tape and I was getting out my airbrush, and then I realized I made a mistake, because these parts need to be white, but when I would use my airbrush right now, these two parts would be black and these parts would be white, and that's exact opposite what I want. So I'm going to take these parts of tape off and I'm going to tape these parts. So this is the Vulture droid right now, and the white is very white, but that will be toned down later with a black wash, so that won't be a problem, but the black is way too black. If I look at my reference picture, you can see that the black is more of a dark gray, so we're going to fix that now. When I would do this again, I think I would first paint the black a dark gray and then add the tape and add the white paint, but we're going to fix it now. For the dark gray I'm going to use 3 parts black and 1 part gold gray, and I'm going to use a sponge to almost cover all the black. And for all the blue parts on the wing, I'm going to use some 3mm masking tape. The next step is to take a small brush in the same blue paint mix and add in some scratches and battle damage on all the white parts. And as a finishing step, I'm also going to add some battle damage with some black paint and a sponge. For the background, I'm going to use this 60 by 20 centimeter foam, and we're going to make some dark rock from it. Maybe you're thinking, why dark rocks? Because one, it looks very cool as a background from our ships, so the ships get all the attention, and a dark background also helps with hiding all the cables. So the first thing what I'm going to do, I have my knife and I'm going to make a lot of slices horizontally. The next step is to get a flat tool like the screwdriver and move horizontally in the same way as the cut you just made to scrape off some foam. The carving part is done and now we're left with this beautiful texture, but some parts are very thin and therefore very weak, so we're going to give it some strength with some plaster. For the plaster I'm going to use two kind of brushes, a larger one to get plaster fast on the project and a smaller one to make sure the plaster is going everywhere. The plaster is dry and now we're going to move over to adding the washes. And some areas I'm going to add some black washes and in other areas I'm going to use different kinds of brown washes. The wash is still drying, but I can already tell that this is too light for my build. So I'm going to leave it for a few minutes so it can dry a little bit more and then I go back with a black wash. The wash is dry and now I have this really cool dark effect, but it took me like 5 or 6 washes. Next time I would paint the foam before I add the washes, maybe a dark gray or something, so I immediately have this effect instead of adding 5 or 6 layers of washes. The next step is to dry brush everything with warm dark gray, and then I add more brown into my paint mix to get a warmer lighter gray for the next layer. And to add some more variety to my background, I'm going to add some dark green tufts. I also wanted to use my V-wing as terrain in some Warhammer and some Star Wars Legion games, so I drilled a hole into the ship and glued in a magnet. I glued a metal rod with a magnet into the foam and it worked surprisingly well. Right now I'm going to add some battle damage to our Vulture droid. And on the back of its head I'm going to drill a hole so I can put in some LEDs and add some cotton wool for some smoke effects. For the fire I'm going to use this yellow LED filament. I already soldered it to some 0.2mm cable. It has a very thin protective coat on it, and I'm going to glue it inside the hole. My friends, thank you for watching, and if you want to know more about the rocky texture I made, I suggest you watch this video where I make a Mandalorian diorama, or maybe this one is more interesting for you. See you next time.